Hi all, on stream and streaming to Play Chess and YouTube. Welcome to another Kingscrusher radio show. I thought this week we could check out the Reykjavik Open. There are some very interesting games there. A feast of chess. Actually, on stream. Pardon me. So the Reykjavik Open is a very fiercely contested Open. Of course, that was where the 1972 World Chess Championship was played, in Reykjavik, Iceland. This year, a player called Abhijeet Gupta did fantastically well in it. And I thought it'd be interesting to have a look at some of his games. He's only 26 years old, so he's becoming a very strong grandmaster. I witnessed some of his demolitions when he was playing at the London Classic. FIDE Open, he was doing very well there. So a very interesting player, I think. I think some have described him as a kind of Kramnik style as well. Let's have a look at some of his games. So from the Reykjavik Open, in round one he was playing quite a low rated opponent, but it's instructive nevertheless, I think. Michael Radetz, 2023, FIDE 2023. So e4 from Michael Radetz, and Abhijeet Gupta played the Sicilian defense. And we have knight f3. We go into an open Sicilian. And this is the classical Sicilian when black actually doesn't move the pawn but plays instead knight c6. I believe this is well, it starts off as classical anyway, but now it goes into a Richter-Alza attack, which is bishop g5. Bishop g5, I think this is Richter-Alza territory, well, according to ChessBase classification. It is bishop g5. The most common move, e6, queen d2. Now here, the most common move for black is not to touch this bishop just yet, believe it or not. More popular is actually to play a6. I guess one of the reasons is, if white takes, you've got the option to take with the g-pawn. We have castling, and again, this is not. You might think this is like what you do routinely, but it's not actually the most popular. Bishop d7, as played, is more popular, over 4,500 games, or h6. So got to be careful in these Sicilian defense variations to know exactly what you're doing. I think there's a very good reason for not moving the bishop yet. So bishop d7. We have f4. This is mainline stuff. b5. It's all been seen before. Well trodden territory. Knight takes c6. Bishop takes. Now, quite often here, players with white are playing bishop d3. That seems to be the move. For example, then bishop e7 to e5, and we get a tense position where I think white's supposed to be slightly better. But in this game, we get actually the quite aggressive looking e5. And it does force matters, but is it that strong? That's the interesting thing. Is e5 actually strong here? Let's add a Kibitzer as well. So black takes. We have this forcing move sequence where you might think it's very desirable, this pin, but actually there's an interesting evaluation to this position here. Guess who's better? Who do you prefer? I know this is a strange one to ask because of the pinned knight, but who do you prefer, white or black? And I'll tell you the engine evaluation. You might be a bit in shock here. The immediate tactical pin does seem scary, right? So I'm wondering who you prefer in this position. Michael Radetz playing white or Abhijeet Gupta, who, by the way, is 2634 at the time of this game. FIDE rate 2634. Do you prefer white or black here? Any ideas? Or any opinions? Black is slightly better, you think? Well, the engine likes black, yeah, because we've got this unpinning, which is actually very, very effective here to unpin. And now g5, yeah. If, you know, bishop takes f6, that's not a big deal. Takes. We've got a good position here with rook g8. Got good pressure. White's a bit tied down here. If he does something like this, then bishop c5. You can see the bishops are amazing. So yeah, black's a little bit better here. Black doesn't even have to take, shouldn't take on g2 because of rook g1 going to a pin, but instead black just builds up some pressure and should be fine. Gets maybe this pawn instead. So yeah, there's an effective unpinning mechanism here. That wasn't tested. Bishop takes f6. So in a nutshell there, we'd get g-file pressure and the bishop pair. So black is in good shape, I think. So we have this sequence. And now knight d7, this pawn is just weak. But white's counterattacks. But g4. Now bishop e2, protecting the pawns. This pawn's still weak. Rook d1. g3. This pawn is now also, of course, vulnerable. For the moment here, black played actually king e8 here. If he takes this pawn here, there might be a little tactic. Knight takes b5, which maybe this put off black, but it's still okay for black. But apparently the strongest here is to play b4 and then take, and it's fine. You've avoided that tactic. That's fine. We've got big pass pawn. But this is pretty good as well, just unpinning what was played, because it means now knight takes e5 is also an option. There's two options. Two pawns are weak. White defends one of them, but the other one goes, and we still got big pass pawns. So yeah, black from that forcing sequence from white has ended up with a winning endgame. So he's won his first pawn. Disaster, really. Bishop e7 covering the squares here, like f6 against that f6 check. Now knight f3, and this pawn's just ready to go with g2, right, to queen the pawn. Knight takes h4, another pawn bites the dust, so it's 2 points. It's over, it's kind of over. There's nothing really for white here. This pawn's a menace. Dennis the menace. And this other one's coming for support. Here this is just losing a piece to rook takes f4 anyway, as well. And white resigned at move 30. So yeah, that was him mowing down the 2023. So yeah, I mean, statistically white was going to lose based on his FIDE rating, so it wasn't really a fantastically amazing fight from a statistical perspective, but things get harder in a Swiss Open. So let's have a look now at a later round. Okay, I hope you get something from that game. Let's see, and in a nutshell, what would I say we get from this game? That as white, the tempting e5, although tempting, seemed to lead black to have the two bishops, and white had basically weaknesses, double-edged aggressive pawns turning out to be weaknesses in the endgame. And white was just mopped up based on that, you know, that e5 pawn basically, and also his g pawn was weak. Yeah, but okay, let's have a look at another game. The next opponent is higher rated, 2405. I believe this was in round 2. So things stack up in the Swiss Open. Oh no, this is round 3 actually, apparently. This is round 3. Sorry I haven't got it in round order. Let's just imagine it's round 3. Yeah, because he's playing black again. So he had a white in round 2 against someone. Unless I can quickly find that, I'm not sure I can find it in chronological sequence. Oh, no. Maybe we can have round 2. first. Okay, let's stack up the stakes. Let's go to the round 2 game instead. So here he's playing someone 22-29 with the white pieces. So you alternate colours in the Swiss Open usually. So his opponent here, Povilas Lazinkas, who's 45 years old, Lithuania FIDE master. Let's have a look at this game with whites. So knight f3. Let's take it from Abhijeet Gupta's perspective. So he plays an English opening, Tartakoa sort of system. No, I don't know, sort of Tartakoa type response. It's Catalan. What is it actually saying here? English opening e6 with b3 by white. At some point, c takes, knight c3. Yeah, white seems to have a standard sort of Catalan looking position. D takes, knight takes. So black's not minding the isolated queen's pawn. Okay, we have knight b5 here, which does actually threaten the immediate knight c7 to fork the rooks. So we see knight g4 striking out that bishop. This is just losing now because of knight takes, you'd think. Yeah, knight takes, and that just loses material because then we can also knight take on f3 with check. So yeah, that parries knight c7, but the bishop just drops back. So again, we've got knight c7 on the cards, you'd think. Okay, knight e6 hits the bishop, h3. Knight goes here. Now we do get knight c7, even though that's been defended. So taking, rook takes, hitting the bishop, bishop moves. And there seems to be a little bit of uncomfort here, but knight d4 is a nice blockade and it protects e2 as well. Not only that, knight c6 is pretty dangerous here, hitting the queen and the bishop. That would be winning material. In fact, if the queen has the... Where does the queen go? In fact, the queen will be checkmated there on knight c6. So black plays bishop d6, now threatening queen takes. This is taken. The rook goes back. Queen b4. Okay, it's a little bit dull, this game. At this stage. There was something I wanted to show you about it, so let's fast forward. I think there was. F5 undoubling the pawns. Now this was interesting. I think white here actually has, if we look at this emerging evolving position, white seems to be getting this central pawn majority going actually against the isolated queen's pawn. You'll see, look at the pawn formation in the center coming up. So h4 is kind of we've got this majority of pawns in the center, which is going to get more significant. Here knight takes, we've got a pin there, so that's immune. Rook h1, but even here there's always bishop h3 check, so that pawn's not going anywhere. Now it's supported though, and we have this central pawn majority emerging, as well as undoubling the pawns. This pawn in particular is pretty dangerous. King e3. We have rook d1. e5, and you see that the pawns in the center, look at black's pawns, they're not so dynamic as white's pawns. So somehow the isolated queen's pawn got liquidated, but white's steamrolling black in the center and is now threatening f6 check. And the game's actually virtually decided. This is a big advantage here already, just with the pawns like this. It's a very, very big advantage. Black gives up a piece in desperation. After knight e8 check, black gives up a piece with knight takes. And it's not so interesting. Like after that, actually, it's just a piece up basically. A little bit of technique, but it's fundamentally it's just a piece up. There's a mating net woven with the rook and knight here. Standard mating net now with knight h6 check and rook f8. Difficult to parry, impossible. Alright, so yeah, that was a big grind, 59 mover. But what I want to say about this game, B takes is always like an option if we just go back to the opening for a moment. In fact, that does seem a little bit more popular, hanging pawns here instead. Okay, that's one thing. But anyway, that has actually been played before with the isolated queen's pawn like this for 8 games. There's something interesting about this. Why not knight takes f4? Doesn't mind the double pawns here as well. There's always knight c7 in the background still. So where does it go wrong for black? It's interesting that maybe a move like this was actually instrumental in getting the central pawns going. Yeah, black was just outplayed, it seems, but you know, white did seem to get these pawns from nowhere, and I'm just wondering if queen f4, maybe that was, maybe black reacted incorrectly here. I don't know, from a practical point of view. But okay, it wasn't the most exciting game ever in the world. Let's carry on looking at another game. I don't know, draw your own conclusions from that one. That's round 2. So he dealt with that 2200, that FM. He's been over 2300 in round 2. Let's go to round 3 now. I think this is I'm pretty sure this is round 3. So Awanda Liang, who's 2405, 2405, international master, born 2003, a 12-year-old international master, playing with the white piece, 12 years old. A child Wonder Liang. No, it's a Wonder Liang. Oh, blimey. He won the under 8 champion, the world under 8 championship on tiebreaks in 2011. 2012, the youngest player in the United States to defeat a grandmaster in a tournament game, when he beat Larry Kaufman at the age of 9 years, 3 months and 20 days. So anyway, this is like a major child prodigy then, yeah. So playing with the white pieces. And he's 2400 at the moment. So 2405 against Gupta is 2634. We have e4 Sicilian. We get an open Sicilian, and yeah, we get this line again with the 2 knights. I think this is like the Sicilian classical, at least to start off with. But he's inviting this Richter Rouser. So bishop g5 is the most popular response here, just to go into this queen d2 line. So we have a6 now, instead of the previous bishop d7. Or did he play bishop d7 before? No, maybe not. Castles, bishop d7, it's here as the main move anyway. This is the system. You play bishop d7, you're not moving the bishop. f4, b5. Now white plays the main move here. Bishop takes f6. Queen takes f6 here is very rarely played. Usually it's over 1200 games with g takes. If you play queen takes f6 here, it shows maybe you don't know the opening. It seems to be very rarely played. White in this position has got e5. That's really dangerous for d7, I think. For example, here we've got knight d takes and we're hitting d7. And this is nasty. Nasty stuff. You don't want to be involved in with the black pieces. Oh, this is an engine line. It must be busted by force. But anyway, yeah, it's big advantage for white. Okay, so you know, you don't want to play queen takes f6. So g takes f6. That's the main move. King b1, queen b6. Quite often here white plays knight takes, but here we see knight f3, and black often plays bishop e7 here, but we see here b4 quite rare, apparently. Knight e2. But it seems logical. a5, f5, e5. Not minding the d5 square. The knights are away from d5 at the moment. Knight g3. Black's got this trump card, the bishop. He tries to use that on this diagonal now. He plays h5. So the idea of keeping that bishop alive, maybe later, h4, maybe first, maybe bishop h6 at some point. Queen d5. We have rook c8. Bishop b5. Queen c7. Bishop drops back here. Knight d8 hitting that bishop. Bishop is protected. King e7. Yeah. Knight b7. Knight's heading for c5. That looks pretty nice idea to have a c5. Knight d2. Now we see h4. And then the bishop does go to that lovely diagonal. Knight e3. Actually now, obviously that's big threat. It's dealt with. Give up the bishop here. Stop that. a4 carrying on with the attack. A takes. Rook a8. Yeah, it seems quite a nice attacking position now against the white king, potentially. But also e4 could be a subject of concern. Could be ganged up on. e4 is a little bit vulnerable. We have g5. Queen a7. Okay, threatening. Queen takes a2. G takes, king takes. And white's not able to really defend that easily. If he wanted to, a2 he can't that easily. So we see rook hg1, threatening mate in 1. Sharp position, yeah. And black actually has got a move to defend against that. Rook h5, thankfully for him, and defending h6. Okay, he's defending both, but he's still got his threat as well. We see a4, pawn sack. Potentially, if black wants to take on pawn, that's probably a bad idea. That would be a bad idea. This move, and it's end of black, end of game. No, instead, knight does something. Knight takes a4, hitting the queen. Nice tactical idea, and can also come to check if queen takes a7. There's a check. We see queen f3. And actually black did play, you might think knight c3 check. Apparently that is a good move. Instead the knight actually, funny enough, came to c5. Probably because he's tempted with this mate in 2 threat of check and mate. So it's cutting out the escape square of the king. It's tempting, but apparently knight c3 check is pretty good. As well, for different reasons. This position is quite good for black. Queen d4. Anyway, let's just have a look at what he said. What he did. Queen f3. We see knight c5. So there's a mate in 2 threat. The king evacuates a little bit. Check. And now there's a real crushing move. With this rook hanging, okay, time is of the essence, but you know black's attack is really quite good here if he plays it correctly. What would you play with black? So there's a great attacking move here in this position. Black's play. So your opponent's 2405, Child Wonder, a Wonder Liang. So you're to play with black. What would you play in this position? Any ideas? The Indian likes it. That's why I'm asking. Actually, it's one of those moves where it's not just that the player played it. The engine also likes it as the top move. Well, Fritz. I mean, Fritz is pretty good anyway. So it's agreed with by the engine as the top like move in the position. Black to play. Any ideas? 200 points at stake if you get it. Alright, I'm going to have to show you soon. I'm going to have to show you, okay. Alright, black plays, well done if you did get it, rook c8. Yeah, so it's hoping, well, it does introduce, I think, potentially, well, a wealth of ideas like this, or this potentially, or even d5, actually. We have check. Scary, but it's taken. Check. And now not king g7 here, because then this is actually just a draw by perpetual, it seems. A scary perpetual. That would just be some sort of perpetual check. No. There's a good move here instead. Just rook f5, sacking the rook temporarily. Gets the bishop there, across the diagonal. Threatening mate on c2, and also there's a checkmate here threatened as well. White plays knight e4 check. That's just taken. g7. Check. Yeah, white's king is so busted. Rook takes c4 check, end of game. You'll note that the queen is attacked here, but it might not even be about that. White resigned here. Let's have a look. If takes, yeah, we can just take the queen. And if white queens, we've got mate in 3 check, for example, like this. Yeah, we're just mating. Yeah, it was a pretty dramatic game, and shows that the Sicilian fighting opening is still alive and kicking, apparently. The Richter-Rauser attack, if you know what you're doing against it, apparently you can get a good opportunity for an attack, leaving the king in the centre. I thought that was quite a nice attacking game, actually. And obviously there were dangers for the black king. He really managed his own king safety ingeniously at the same time as conducting his attack there. Would you agree? Because it did seem a bit scary, didn't it, for black? But he crashed through. Yeah, that was pretty good, I think, how he crashed through. This quite little move, rook c8. Well, knight takes a4 essential, but coming in like this with the rook c8. Yeah, if white had taken here, actually, there's a really strong move in this position. Can you see a really strong move here in this variation? Black to play, which I should have mentioned. Why was queen takes h5 not on? There's actually quite a direct, well, there's two direct refutations. One's quite clear. One's very, very clear, actually. As clear as you can get. There's a move here, yeah, for black. Can you see it? Why queen takes h5 wasn't possible. Let's checkmate. Checkmate. That's pinned. Let's checkmate. Also, this is a mate in 2 anyway. But there's a mate in 1 and a mate in 2 here. So let's have a look at this position after rook c8. It's dangerous. The queen can't leave d3 or b3. Right? If here, we can still build up the attack with bishop b5. So again, if queen took here, we've got a mate in 3 now. Knight takes, rook takes, and mate here. So bishop b5 builds up the pressure, and white's just collapsing. Then knight takes, And if queen takes, we've got a skewer, I believe. Bishop a4 skewering. If knight takes, rook takes, it's all pretty much collapsing. Mate threat. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, these variations are all very interesting. So that's why rook g6 check was played, yeah. But this is ingenious, rook f5 as well. I mean, necessary as well. I mean, it does help the attack, of course, to have a bishop on f5 in any case. All right, so that was round 3. So the stake's getting higher there. This 2400 he had to beat there. The child prodigy, as you do quite often in Swiss Opens, have to beat child prodigies. Let's go on to round 4. I hope this is round 4. Let me just check. Yeah, I got a round 4 game. The stake's getting a little bit higher now. 2464. Nikita Petrov. Nikita Petrov is a he actually. 19-year-old Russian. He became a FIDE master in 2012 and an IM in 2014. 19-year-old Russian. All these kids he has to play in this FIDE Open. Yeah. Okay, so he's playing with the white pieces against Nikita Petrov. So d4. Knight f6. We see c4 e6. We go into. He's using the Catalan setups. Okay, this temporary pawn sack. He takes there. Yeah, white's got a slight advantage according to Livebook in this position. That bishop's a bit of a problem piece. The pressure on the diagonal is quite comfortable. So we see black taking here, and now queen c7. We see bishop e3 using that pin. Yes, not very nice for black. And in fact here, white simplified, didn't mind getting the queens off, because what he's got is these nice bishops in unison on these diagonals. This is quite a nice position to have. Black's on the back foot here, obviously, for development. Now, the knight on e5 wasn't moved actually. It was actually supported with bishop d4. And that support is challenged with rook d8. And in response to that, the bishop is now attacked. And the black pieces are all going to the first and second ranks, because now this ugly looking move is played. Knight e8. Look at all of black's pieces. There's only one piece on the second rank. Yeah. So who do you prefer here? Do you prefer white or black? No bias in my tone of voice. Do you prefer white or black here? What a position. Yeah, to have with the white pieces. Isn't this nice? You must prefer white, surely. Tell me you prefer white on stream. So anyway, the pressure's just built up here with rook fd1. What is the concrete threat though? What is white concretely threatening? Or does white need to concretely threaten anything? How is black crawling out of this? He can't move this. Can he move that? I don't even know if he can move his bishop without dropping a piece. He played f6. If he moves his bishop, we have bishop takes b7. And then bishop c6 here is nasty for black. We don't want to drop b7. Yeah, black's in a tangle. Plays f6. We have knight c4. These rooks are just amazing, aren't they? Together. Knight d6 and the bishops. Okay, so knight e3 keeping the tension. He could have maybe considered taking on d6. That is given us quite strong by the engine, but this position, for example, is given us as pretty good for white. Because we've got bishop takes a7 here, getting that pawn Yeah. But no, he played actually the more tension maintaining knight e3. There could be bigger fish. There could be bigger fish to fry if you maintain the tension. Forget about winning a pawn. You might be winning a piece if you something horribly goes wrong for black here. Black crawls back now because white is threatening rook takes c7 again. If the bishop moved, say the bishop moved here, we've got a3. We're just going to do this. All right, to save time, let's ask if the bishop went here. We can take here and go here. Ouch. And in this position, we could end up splat with knight takes b6. Yeah, so basically the knight humbly went back to defend c7. We have knight c4 again, knight d6. Now knight a3 making a change. And the threat here is again the bishop. Alright, it's moved. But alas, you know, we've got this pin here, bishop c5. And we can just build up on the pin, potentially. We have knight f7, which is answered now with rook takes. More simplification, you might think. Is white blowing it? Hold on a sec. Bishop e7. Black hastens to the end here. Apparently the best move is bishop e5, which is crazy looking. It hits b2 and gives up the piece on d8. But white does have knight c4 here. Doesn't have to do this to allow this. White has, in this position, if this was played, which it wasn't, white has knight c4. And in this position, white's doing well again. But anyway, black collapsed here completely. He plays knight c6 instead. And this allows a neat finishing tactic. Can you guess? There's a neat finishing little combo here. White to play and win. White to play and win. Catalan enthusiasts would maybe like to try and guess this in particular, because you've got your Catalan bishop to celebrate. Yeah, you've got this pressure to celebrate, you've got this lead development, you've got loads of disconnection issues to celebrate. There's a lot of things to celebrate. How do you finish black off here? Have a go. Finish black off by force. What would you play in this position? Yeah, rook takes c6. And dropping the rook here. And black resigned, yeah. Wow. That 2-4-6-4 found it hard to get his pieces off the first two ranks. How on earth does that happen from the Catalan opening? Because surely we should be making notes here about this Catalan. How did this Catalan do that to play with the black pieces? Was it some sort of magic trick? Black was just on the first two ranks. How? Fascinating, isn't it? It's worthy of study, the game. I mean, we've briefly visited it. It's worthy of maybe deeper study. How black is in such trouble here with the queens off. Big trouble. Big trouble. So let's have a look at another game anyway. Let's progress this tournament he was in. So that was in round 4. Now he's up against the British Grandmaster in round 5, I think, which is a drawn game. It was a draw, and I only really wanted to show you the decisive games. He drew with Garwin Jones in round 5, who Garwin Jones is 2-6-4-5 higher rated than him, but it was a draw, and I didn't really go over it even. I'm sorry, I don't even like playing through draws. I just like decisive games. But do you want me to whiz through it or not? Whiz through the draw or not? I haven't even prepared for it, so I can play the moves quickly, and we can go on to the next round, or we can just focus on the decisive games. But factually, he had a draw in round 5 with Garwin Jones. let's not go through it. It was torture. No, I don't want. No, it looks like torture to go through. Maybe another time. Let's have a look at the decisive games that I have a vague idea of talking about. Yeah. So in round 6 there was a draw against Sheparanov. Don't worry, there's some really good stuff coming up. Who's 2-6-8-4. So he drew with Sheparanov in round 6. So this tournament was going really, really well. He hasn't lost yet. Okay, so he played 2 quite strong GMs, higher rated than him. And then things really get juicy in round 7. In round 7, this is a 10-round tournament. Things start to get juicy in round 7. He's black against Shabalov, US Grandmaster. Alexander it's a US Grandmaster, right? Let's just check that out. So Alexander Shabalov is not too shabby. He's 25-20, Shabalov. Let's just get some bio on him. He was actually born in Riga, Latvia in 1967. He studied under the former world champion and fellow Rigan, Mikhail Tal, believe it or not. So this is his opponent with white. We'll take the black perspective. So this guy studied under Tal, 48-year-olds at the moment, and FIDE rating 25-20. Shabalov won his IM title in 1989, his GM title in 1991. About 1992 he emigrated to the United States and settled in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So he's known for courting complications and uncompromising attacking style. Well, that'd be, yeah, so he's like, if he's like modelling Tal, this would be an interesting game, right? Let's see what happened. He played e4. Yes. e4. Okay, we have a solid reply. Instead of the Sicilian defence, Tal scored heavily against the Sicilian defence. So Gupta maybe knows something of Shabalov's style and sticks now with an ultra solid system in response. He goes for, yeah, the Berlin defence, funny enough. So the Berlin defence is his weapon of choice. Okay, and now we have d3, bishop c5. Of course, we know now from the recent Caruana against Nakamura news that white has a decent plan in taking queen e2, knight, just castling queenside and aiming for an attack is an idea now that's emerged that has to be taken seriously, really seriously. But anyway, in this game c3 was played. Black castled, white castled. This is still well-trodden territory, rook e8. Bishop g5 is very popular. h6, bishop drops back. Bishop e7 unpinning. d6. Bishop d7, yeah, this has still been seen before in a few games. Now this move might be slightly less usual than knight f1 actually, but okay. So a4 was played, and now black lashes out with g5. And actually plays in this position, well, the knight hasn't got too many squares. We've seen this similar kind of idea last week, if you remember, in the Women's World Championship. Yifan Hu playing for g4 to sort of, it's not just about the bishop, sometimes it's about the knight on the rim. I don't know if you remember last week's Yifan Hu game, one of those Muschuk games, had a similar pattern anyway with the knight coming to h4. But here it's a tactical liability. I mean, black just plays knight takes e4. The thing is, does this backfire in some way, like on the light squares or something, or is black just picking up a pawn? So this is the question: is it going to backfire? D takes. Black's picking up a pawn. Okay, but yeah, there is some definite light square compensation, surely. The first thing is a5 threatens immediately a6, which could be nasty. That's dealt with there. Now, this is also kind of nasty stuff potentially on f7 and b7. We see king g7 here. So it doesn't matter about f7 and b7. It doesn't matter here because black can play this. Because if it takes, it's not with check, and we can play this. And it's backfiring on f2. So king g7 defends indirectly against queen b3. But we see knight f1. White's trying to maybe drum up some light square compensation. Okay, black's obviously a pawn up. Let me just count the pawns. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, 3, 4, 5. Well, no, 8. Black's got all his pawns intact, but the light squares are a little bit vulnerable, especially f5. If a knight can maneuver to f5, is there going to be a problem for black? We see knight e7, knight e3, rook f8, and bishop f1. Queen b3 might be a nuisance. It's stopped actually with bishop e6. And now we see c4, which does weaken the d4 square. And the knight actually crawls back there, potentially, to go into d4. Check. That's taken. Yeah, and to be honest, yeah, it looks as though black hasn't really suffered that much, as he should have, for being a pawn up. I don't know if you think black's suffering here, but I can't see it at the moment. Anyway, so rook a3, and black, the engine is saying to take another pawn, to be greedy, to take another pawn, but he actually doesn't bother with that yet. He plays h5. We have h3. Yeah, it seems as though white's trying to somehow use the g file against the black's king. But now we have king f6, and black is actually interested in using the g file against white's king. So rook g3, rook g8. And yes, now we can actually, really consider taking this pawn as well, because the rooks are connected, right? So we can then do this after. It's all roses here, it seems. Bishop d3, okay, but that's protected. But the knight hops in now to d4. And, white's king does seem a little bit shaky here, because there's this build-up of pressure. This knight's a real pain, central knight like that. Bishop e4. We see an aggressive, invasive move, queen f4. And now we see rook e3. c6. Bishop goes to b1. And it looks as though rook e4 it has to be dealt with actually, because then there'll be pressure on g4 from everywhere. So that's dealt with d5, stopping any rook e4. C takes, c takes. But black is a pawn up, right? Rook e1. And now has even got the c file, rook ac8. There's horrible stuff on the c file potentially. In fact, rook c1 is on the cards to just simplify the position, because we've got that knight e2 tactic here. So rook c1 is actually on the cards in this position. I can't easily give a token move to demonstrate that, I think. Let me see, hg, well, rook c1. In fact, stronger than taking is knight e2 check. Pardon me, knight e2 check. That's the killer tactic there. Yeah. No, okay. So rook c1 has to be dealt with. It starts to all go wrong when the opponent's got a central line like this, or you've got one. It should fall apart for the opponent tactically. If you look at the forcing moves, this is such a major trump card. This big knight in the center. So anyway, rook ge3 was played, defending against that. But the g file is just there. This is like an open goal on the king. G takes f(h)(3) is probably really strong, just ripping open to shreds the g file. But another strong move was played instead, which is another way of opening the g file. I mean, I'm not going to ask you, don't worry. Knight f3 check, yeah, knight f3. But we'll have a look at it. Why did white resign after knight f3 check? I presume he's getting mated in all the variations here. Let's have a look. G takes, for example, G takes is just a forced mate, because we've got here rook g1 check. queen g5, and that classic form pawn, mate. Yeah. And if king here, we just got the mate in one, and if king f1, then we've got knight takes e1. We don't have to mate. We can just rip through like this, and that's good enough. Or here, check. That's great. It's just, we're just winning anyway. So yeah, it was like strange how white seems to lose a pawn by force in this position by playing the move in this position. He played the move a4 and seemed to lose a pawn virtually by force, because if you note, the knight's only got, like, hasn't got many squares. It's only got h4 potentially. The usual move in this position is, let me just see what the games are here. On knight f1, who's played this? No, I can't. This has been played before. If something like this, I don't think this is that bad, because we've always got knight here. Probably this looks like a blunder in a way. This knight's got to be given a square. This gives it a square, and it's been played before. Bishop a4. I'm wondering why this is not working here. It does work here to win a pawn, and that's been played before as well. I don't know who played that. But anyway, knight f1 seems to be the most sensible. So things started to go wrong on a4. This 4-6 sequence just seems to be winning a pawn to knight takes e4. As for the compensation, I don't know where it is. Does anyone know where the compensation is? I can't find it. I mean, does everyone agree it's better to play black? Let's play black here. Where's the compensation? I don't think white has much compensation, but I mean, it was expertly dealt with. I don't think c4 also. I mean, c4 probably didn't help because it weakened d4. I mean, that looks like something you might want to avoid, weakening the d4 square. Here instead is the engine choice. Oh, it's pretty miserable. Okay, so let's go on to another game. Yeah. So that was in round 7. Now things are starting to get tough, right? It's 10 round Swiss. Now he's playing against Movsian. Sergei Movsian. This is a grind and a half. So don't worry. I won't bypass this. It was a decisive game. It's in round 8. So Sergei Movsian, playing with the black pieces. So he's white against Sergei Movsian, right? We're going to flip the board. Sergei Movsian is 37 years old, Armenian. He was an IM in 1995, GM in 1997, Czech champion 1998, Slovak champion in 2002 and 2007. Alright, so, okay, so very strong GM, 2-6-5-3. So let's see what happened. D4, knight f6. So there might be a pronunciation thing here, by the way. Hold on a sec. No, I can't see one. Not on chessgames.com. So sounds to me like Movsian. Movsesian. Sorry, not Movsesian probably. Okay, sorry about that. Anyway, so knight f6, c4, e6. We see the Rubinstein variation. This e3 is the Rubinstein variation against the Nimzo. And we see this knight ge2. a3, the bishop drops back. c6. Also c5 has been played a bit here as well, but c6 is popular. This is quite rare. Bishop, no, it's not rare. What am I talking about? This is the main move, bishop e2 apparently. Black often plays this, but okay, let's get to it. D takes. It seems to be a fairly solid position for black at the moment. We have d takes e5 in this position. It's probably a bad idea to play something like e4 because you're giving black a lot of dark squares, which probably black really. She's also got this tactic bishop takes g3 here. This is very, very bad news, this continuation. So tread with caution about e4. No, d takes is the main move. And note that far from giving black the dark squares with a move like e4, white is trying to accentuate the light squares in the position with this next move, queen c2. So looking at light squares and possibilities, which might not involve playing e4 just yet. Bishop e6 is played. Knight takes. Knight ce2. Okay, it's a bit of a grind this game. Let's just get a position later on. White has a small... Does white have a small advantage? Maybe. Yeah, I think he's getting a small advantage because black's pawn structure is a little bit more fragmented. That pawn weakness on e6. And there's quite a lot of manoeuvring here. Finally e4 there. Okay, white's slightly better in this position, move 34. And he's got nice control of the e5 square. Yeah, slightly better still. So black is a little bit paralysed now. He can't play knight c6 because of rook d7 check. Yeah, this would be quite good with rook d6 being a key move. For example here, get a pawn. Alright, so black's slightly uncomfortable here. He plays rook c7 and he has to hold on to b6 now. And now b6 is attacked again. So it's a grindy game, grindy. The rook infiltrates. And again, rook goes to c7 now. Threatening knight e5 immediately to end the game, virtually. Because if rook d8, there's knight c6 check. Right, so king d8. Black's pretty desperate here for moves. He's got outplayed really. He plays b5. He is starting to fall apart now. Knight takes a5, threatening knight c6 check. So he's officially a pawn down. F4, E5, check. King infiltrates. And it's kind of over here because black's overloaded after this next move, F5, which generates this pass pawn. And white's queening too quickly here. This is totally gone because if rook takes, we've got check, and then we play e7. We're queening with check. It's gone now. This position's finished. It's over. Black tried king b7. After rook takes a3, this is a nifty maneuver to get behind the passed pawn. Black can't stop this passed pawn very easily. He's losing the rook to try and stop it. He resigns, you know, it's the only way to stop it, is just give up the rook. There's no point. So yeah, he resigned here, Muslim resigned. There's a bit of a grindy game. Just for the record, that was in round 8 against Mobsesian. Do you want an action replay? Or not really? No, let's go on to another game. Okay, so that was a grindy game. Fantastic game to beat that opponent. So in round 9, he was against Grandelius, who's also another strong player, 2-6, 4-6. And he's with the black pieces against Grandelius. So Grandelius, for those interested, a bit of bio. Nils Grandelius is a 22-year-old Swedish grandmaster. He was an FM in 2007, IM in 2008, GM in 2010. Okay, let's have a look at this game. So knight f3 from Nils Grandelius. We see knight f6, c4 g6. We get into a Grunfeld. Now white maybe plays a surprising move here. Usually just castles in this position, but white played h4 here, which has got aggressive intent. Just, yeah, things like this, h5, funny enough. But black has this amazing move called h6 here. So that if h5, we've got g5. It's amazing. It keeps things shut. So yeah, no need to panic. h6 is played. And now white castles. c5. Knight takes d5, queen takes d4, c takes. And the idea of bishop e3 using the pin, actually, ingenious. Black gives up the pawn back like that, d3. We see knight e1 hitting the queen. Queen goes back, knight takes d3. Knight c6. Black seems to have nice pieces here, nice control of the d4. He doesn't seem to have too many issues. In fact, this h4 doesn't seem to be that great in this position because g4 looks to be weaker than usual. We see rook c1, knight d4. d4 also seems to be weaker than usual as well. These two squares seem weaker than usual for white, in my opinion. Rook e1. We see rook d8. And in fact, these factors are coming together because bishop g4 seems just basically uncomfortable if you've got things like this coming up. Queen a4, bishop d7. Queen b4, wanting an exchange of queens. That is taken. Knight f5, threatening structural damage. Bishop moves. e5. Bishop c6 now, unleashing an attack on the bishop and also trying to get rid of this guy. So the bishop moves, we get rid of that g2 bishop. Black's done really well out of the opening here. He's more than equalized. The engine actually likes black now. This is a great achievement with the black pieces against the 2-6-4-6 GM, you know, slightly higher than Ashby got to his 2-6-3-4. So a fantastic position he's achieved here in this critical round 9, penultimate round. He plays e4. And we have bishop takes g7, king takes g7. I don't know, maybe things have gone wrong, it seems, for white. Why should black have such an easy position here, it seems? Rook ed1. And the rooks stare at each other, okay, for a moment. But rook takes d8, rook takes d8. With now black threatening rook d2 basically. Rook c4. The knight's kicked though, and it goes back awkwardly because now rook d2 stops the rook from doing anything, and black's threatening rook takes e2, e3, and it's if this knight wasn't there, then knight e3 check, of course. Okay, knight d6 though, b6, and now knight b7. The knight may be coming back with aggressive intent here. Well, the rook's tied down always to c2 anyway. b4. I think black was threatening knight c5 here just to block the rook from the knight. So b4 stops knight c5. A takes, but now the knight does come in. So no, it doesn't go to c5. Doesn't go to c5. Plays knight a5. And we have got that. I think we've got that tactic idea here that if rook takes b6 was played, we've got knight c4 with the idea of knight takes e3. This wasn't played. This would be nasty for white. Very nasty for white. This position is to be avoided. So no, that has to be avoided, that possibility of the knight coming to take on e3. We see rook c2. So is black prepared to try and grind this out? He does. Play on. Rook takes c2. King comes up. The knight comes in. Is this enough to win? We see g4. Knight d2. Check. Knight takes f3. Actually, this ending is abysmal now. In fact, after knight d4, that seems to be a big mistake. It's abysmal, that ending. White should have perhaps played knight e7 check according to the engine here. In which case, this position apparently is not so completely winning for black. This position here. But the way it was played was actually knight d4, and what happens now after knight takes f3 is that black is threatening to get this pawn as well, and we reach this king and pawn ending which is terminal after king e5. This is bad news, this position for white. What does white do here? He plays a4. But what else? If he plays e4, then actually even stronger than f5, well that's just equal, is actually b5. And if a3, now f5, this position is just zugzwang. We're going over here. We're going to queen this pawn. So that's to be avoided. So white plays a4 and we get this f5, and it still looks like zugzwang. The king goes to e2, we have king e4, king d2, and now both king f3 and f4 just apparently they win in this position. King f3 was chosen and white resigned. If king d3 we go here, and then we're going to take this, and it's all over actually. Because yeah, this pawn is queening. Yep. That was the final position anyway. So he completely ground down Niels Grandelius in round 9. That was a critical round. So ground down a fellow GM, about the same rating. I can only point to things like h4 as maybe, although slightly offbeat, you might think a surprise weapon, h4, but h4 is not so funny a few moves later. It's not so hot the way this evolved, this game, as far as I can see, because black, actually, if you look at this, when he gives back the pawn after this position here, I'd say black's got pressure in the position and has equalized. I'm wondering about bishop takes. There's no bishop takes b7 or anything. No, I just think Alright, the engine suggestion here. I mean, he played rook e1. I don't know, white got passive. Rook d8. White got passive. What would be better here? Bishop takes? It's an engine suggestion. Maybe. Maybe give black the bishop pair. I don't know. It just seemed passive the way it was played. No fair? Bit of compensation. It just seemed to get quite passive anyway, the way this was played. This bishop on d2, an excuse for bishop c6. This position, this bad ending, just got outplayed. Okay, yeah, interesting. Alright, so, okay, now we'll go to the final round. So round 10. Oh, no, hang on. Sorry, I think I just showed you the last decisive game. That was round 9. That was the last decisive game. In round 10, he had a draw, and he ended up winning the Reykjavik Open. He had a draw with Rambaldi, who's 2-5-4-1. So he ended up with 8.5 out of 10 and won the Reykjavik Open. I've shown you some of the. I've shown you all the key decisive games. So he had 4, 5, 6, 7 wins. 7 wins in this tournament, and 3 draws. It's pretty cutthroat. You've got to win most of your games in these. A lot of your games in these Opens. Coming seconds. I mean, he actually won it by a full point. Actually, believe it or not. Chasing him, they were only on 7.5. Several GMs were on 7.5. Sheparanov, Rambaldi, Richard Rapport, Tari, Arian Tari, Grandelius, Melnik, Grigorantis, and a host of GM, a wealth of GMs on 7.5 out of 10. So by a full point, he won the Reykjavik Open. So look out for this GM. Maybe he's on his way up. Maybe he'll be in the 2700 club one day. Okay, so I hope you got something from these games this week, and have a good week. See you next week. Comment. Remember to like the video if you got anything out of it. Likes are always appreciated. Okay, until next week. Comments or questions on YouTube. Thanks very much.